Now the Sonic series is no stranger to having some rather saucy content. Rogue the Bat is a big example of that, a real big example. Today we'll be talking about the censorship made to the Dreamcast Sonic Adventure, the Dreamcast best-selling game of all time. What could there even be to censor though? Well, those of you familiar with the channel shouldn't be too surprised by the stuff we're about to uncover. Our tale begins in the casino. Now as we step inside the building you'll see all of the shiny attractions and the place really looks pretty impressive. There's lots of flashing lights and even things like gigantic pirate ships on the upper levels. Then we get to this display over here, a sign sort of thing that just says Casinopolis. You can't interact with the structure in any way, but it looks pretty nice, right? Okay, but this is not the original version. You see, over in Japan, this sign thing looked very different. Instead, there was a cowgirl with a gigantic cocktail in her hand. I'll just leave that a minute to let it sink in. Furthermore, if you bumped into the display, it would let out a rather suggestive female moan. So yeah, this was censored when it was released outside of Japan, perhaps due to the game's E rating. But now it's time for a little history lesson. You see, the Western version of Sonic Adventure was released almost a year later than the Japanese version, and came with lots of bug fixes and some new features. This version was then later released in Japan under the name Sonic Adventure International, and all future versions of the game were based on this release. Which means yes, the Japanese International version, as well as both the Western and Japanese GameCube versions, and all later PC and PS3 360 ports are censored as well. Now that would be the end of the video, if it wasn't for some massive discoveries made by the folks over on the Sonic Retro forum. We will now be discussing the differences that can be found in a prototype version called Sonic Adventure AutoDemo. This build was a Dreamcast disc given to Japanese retailers to demonstrate the game. It is not at all playable and is basically comparable to one big 23-minute trailer, and it has a build date predating the final release by about 2 months. Whilst differences can be found just by watching the footage, the real mysteries were uncovered by hacking the disc, which allowed you to take control of the game and play a fully fledged prototype version of Sonic Adventure. Now there were many differences found in this build, but this is censored gaming and we're just going to skip to the especially interesting ones. The first part of the video discussed the censored Cowgirl. Well, this is the original. It's not textured, but yeah, the woman was originally a bunny girl, and rather than just a single cocktail, she's beside a whole bar. The story behind this is unknown, but it's a rather interesting find and just such a big difference to what we ended up getting over in the West. There's only one other change that's really relevant with what we cover, and it revolves around Amy Rose, Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend. Now we're going to have to take a close look at her jump animation. Pay careful attention to how her dress moves as she falls. Anybody worked out what's coming next yet? Well, in the prototype version, Amy's dress flew right up, leaving her completely exposed. Again, there was no word on why this was changed or anything, but this will be far from the first time for Amy to have her underwear toned down. The anime Sonic X, for example, had this panty shot removed over in the West, although they did keep in the more obscured moment that followed. Who knew Sonic could be so sexual? Well, apart from things like this. Thank you for watching.